Hello lovely people, I'm Catherine and welcome to this week's Journal for All Seasons, Journaling for Self-Care. Before I talk about this week's theme, I just wanted to show you that I have done some work to my cover, those of you who watch me making it, because I don't think I show the cover in every video, but basically I originally was just the photo and the book text and the whole natural red cover. And I've been and done some black gesso on it, and I've done some collage and some colouring in, and I put another quote. I've also taken the wrap, the tie off, or I cut it off, and used it, made a Franken tie, if you like, added another bit. So, because it was just a pain, especially when filming, to have all this clanging about attached to the book. So that's now independent of it. And on the back I have so far just done a black border, and I'll put something here at one point, but I don't know what yet. But also just to say that the process of me doing this and a couple of other of my journals will be the bonus video on my Kofi this month. I'll put that up on Saturday. So those of you lovely kind people who support me on Kofi, that will be a bonus video for this month. Okay, so for this week, a few things emerge. What I try and do with themes is just sort of try and listen. I think that's part of the self-care thing. You know, listen to myself, listen to what's going on in the world around me, my immediate world. I try not to pay too much attention to the wider world, and see what themes emerge from that. And so there are a few things. One was I was walking in the park last Wednesday, and there's an Irish woman with a little dog who loves Stella and Stella loves him, and sometimes we walk together, but she was crossing the other side of the park from me, but she sort of put both hands around her mouth and shouted across, because we've had all kinds of conversations about, you know, she's a kindred spirit, shall we say. But anyway, she cupped her hands around her mouth and she shouted, I won't do the Irish accent, "There's a full moon tonight." And so I, waved and did the thumbs up and so on. The other thing is I've been feeling a bit strange this week, the last few days. A little bit low, flat, whatever, not, really sort of walking through treacle kind of feeling. Nothing specific. I felt a little bit like I was getting a cold, but no cold has materialised. And so then I began to wonder if that is related some way. You'll have to tell me if you think that you are affected by, moon phases and seasons and all that. I think we must be, because we're part of nature. Just because we're human, we're still animals and part of nature. So I just started wondering if there was a connection, because the word lunatic comes from lune, which is moon and all that. And then aside from that, sorry, this is quite a long witter to begin with. Aside from that, I've been thinking about the concept of home, because those of you who are following along with the comfort coverlet, this month's theme is home. And I added up that and told you in the last video, the one before I think, that I'd lived in 30 different places, and as many of you know, I've recently moved countries. I've come back home to England from France, and now I'm living on my own, whereas for the last 20 years I was living as part of a couple, so that's a big change. So yeah, I've been thinking about the concept of home, and I wanted to go back and reread this book, which I'm sure many of you know, by Clarissa Pinkola Estes, called Women Who Run with the Wolves. Now, on the cover here, there's a quote from Maya Angelou, which says, "Everyone who can read should read this book." I'm kind of in agreement with her. But there's a chapter in here called, and yes, I do turn my corners of my pages over, it's my book. I'll do it if I want to. Don't shout at me. There's a chapter in here called Homing, Returning to Oneself. And that was a chapter that I wanted to reread, so I have reread it. And if you don't know this book, basically she retells folk tales, and then she talks about how that affects particularly the feminine psyche, and you know, how we think about things and how the world thinks about us and so on. But there was thinking about the moon, and you know, does it affect my moods, and the cycle, you know, the phases of the moon and cycles of nature and so on. A couple of weeks ago we did Imbolc, which is the, you know, Celtic festival halfway between the solstice and the equinox. But these words leapt off the page at me. I'll just read them to you. The psyches and souls of women also have their own cycles and seasons of doing and solitude, running and staying, being involved and being removed, questing and resting, creating and incubating, being of the world and returning to the soul place. And that just spoke to me so loudly. So that's the quote I'm going to put on my spread. So what kind of spread am I going to do? Well, I did think the story associated with that chapter of Homing is about the seal woman. And I did think about representing that, but I wanted to kind of represent the moon idea and all that, and obviously the wolves are a big theme in this book. So I thought let's go with wolf as a theme. So that's what I'm going to do. So that's the wittering part over. So I'm going to jump now into my spread and how I'm going to make it, and I hope you enjoy it. Okay, so here are my images which I got from Pixabay, which is a website for copyright-free photographs. I'll put a link below to this exact image. But all I did was I went into Pixabay and I searched wolf howling at the moon, and this came up. So I have printed it out, although that really was unnecessary and a waste of ink. And I traced the wolf on tracing paper, and I actually moved it, or her, she's a she-wolf, a bit lower down. So I hope you can see my lines there, I think you can. So I put her a bit lower down on the left-hand corner, and I just traced the tree and carried it on up, you know, because it wasn't tall enough. And then I just freehanded this zigzaggy line. So what I want to do now is paint the sky, all the sky area. And I'm going to mix a bit more of this because I've been having a play. I mixed a sort of dark purple because I want to do the wolf and the trees and the rock in black. So I wanted the, you know, didn't want the sky black, so I went for this dark purple. And I had these two little tubes, well in fact I've got a box, but these were nearly run out of, this is watercolour but in a tube, it's really cheap stuff. Ultramarine blue, a tiny dot of red, and then this is a real mishmash. You won't have this, but just get some purple however you can. I've also had this craft paint which is grey, and some black gesso. So I basically mixed a lot of blue, a tiny dot of the red, enough grey in it just to dull it down, and then a tiny dot of the black gesso to get this kind of, this was where I tried it on here. So it's going to dry like that. So I'll go ahead and paint all that. I don't think you need to watch me do that. And then I'll come back when that's dry, ready to move on to the next stage. Okay, I finished my painting. Just to say, this paper, this was artist's canvas. You know, your paper's almost certainly different, and this was sketchbook paper. This paper, I think it was intended for acrylic. It was a pad that I bought. But anyway, it sucked the paint in like nobody's business. And this was sketchbook paper, and this, you know, took much less paint. So the upshot was I could see that I was going to run out of paint. So I started doing almost bands across because it's very difficult to match the exact colour. So instead of, you know, carefully painting in one whole area here and then mixing more paint, which would be a slightly different colour here and so on, when I saw I was running out of paint, I did a band across, mixed more paint, did a band across, so it kind of looks more natural. That's just a little tip. And the other thing I forgot to say about this image, this was one image, and I downloaded it onto my little tablet-y thing, and then I cropped it one half, and then I cropped it the other half, and I just take it into Word and print it out from, and, you know, pull it up to the full size. I could have reduced the margins and made it even bigger, but I didn't think of it. I just, you know, I don't use fancy photo editing type programs, I just use Word. That's how I did that. So I'm going to take Stella for a walk because I think it's stopped raining, and let this paint dry, and then I'll come back when we're back from our walk and carry on with the next stage. Okay, so that's my paint all dry. All I've done is draw around a lid for my moon, just with a pencil, but I'll come back to that later. What I'm going to do now is paint all the silhouette area, and I'm going to use my black gesso because I don't think black watercolour will colour it blackly enough, if that's a word. So I'll go ahead and do that. I'm not going to worry too much about the edges because I plan on going back in with colouring pencils and maybe some black pen and other stuff later. But I'm just going to do the best I can and block out the black area. And I'll be back when I've done that. Okay, I have painted the tree and the rock with the black gesso. Black gesso is really black and gloopy and matte as opposed to an acrylic, which would have shine to it. Still a bit shiny because it's wet, but it will dry matte. But obviously, you know, use what you've got. You could even colour it in with a black Sharpie or something like that if you didn't have thick black paint. But I'm now thinking that I want the she-wolf and the pine trees to kind of be slightly different but still very much in silhouette. So I'm thinking for the pine trees, I've got still my cheap watercolours. I can't even remember where they came from. They're written in French first, so I assume they came from somewhere in France. I don't know. Probably. But you know, they were just a box of these tubes. So I've squeezed out the sap green, which is way too bright. I'm going to mix it with some black gesso, so it's sort of very dark green, almost black, and then I'm going to paint my pine trees, and then I'm going to mix the black gesso with maybe just a tiny bit. Is there a white? Yeah, there's titanium white. Or possibly some of the grey craft paint to do my wolf. So I'll go and do all the painting, let all the painting dry, and then I'll be back for the next thing. But I just wanted to say that, you know, I decided not to do this all black. So be back in a mo. Okay, I've done my trees green. This is curling up when it's wet, but you see when it's dry it squashes back down again, this strange artist canvas on a pad. Because I didn't mix the paint very well, some of the green came out darker. So I'm sort of playing with that a bit and mixing some more of the black in, just, you know, for fun. So it's not fine art I'm doing here. This is and I think this is a little bit that famous ugly stage that they talk about. I'm planning lots of other things. The advantage of mixed media always is there's layers and layers, and it's only done when you're happy with it. So I've just mixed it a bit darker, and I'm just going to daub some of that. Daub being the operative word. Just more down towards the bottom. I hope my head's not in the way. I hope you can see. But I think you know what daubing looks like. By the way, I love this little brush. It is a size 16 angle brush by Van Bleiswijk. But it's got, can you see, it's got a little wedge tip. Can you see it? Can you see? Focus, focus, focus. So you can use the pointy end for the precision bits and then the flat end for the big areas. So you haven't got to keep changing brushes. Sorry for my chair. So I'll just go on and darken up along the bottom. It's kind of, it's either shadows or it's, you know, other foliage in the foreground. Can be anything really. Anything you want it to be. But just, you know, give it a bit of depth. And I'm going just randomly up and down. And then I shall do my she-wolf grey, as I said, very dark grey. And then when I've done all that, and it's all dry, I'll be back. I just feel like the Terminator when I say that. I'm not going to do the accent. I'll see you in a bit. Okay, so that's all my painting done, and like I said, I'm going to go with my colouring pencils later, but before I do that I'm going to start on the moon. So I'm going to do that with collage. I'm going to move my book, now you've seen it all, just to one side a bit so that only the moon's in shot and I've got somewhere to work here. Get rid of that bit. Sorry, completely unprepared. I guess I need my glue book and I use the medium. She said without any sniggering whatsoever. Let's just move it back over a bit. So what I thought was, I'd like the moon to kind of have, sorry, from a chair, a halo effect. So I thought I'll start with some tissue paper, bigger than I want my moon. I've drawn around, I don't know if you can see my pencil line, but I drew, it's about this big. And then once I've got the tissue paper on bigger than the moon, I've pulled some sort of greys and dark browns and things out of my collage scraps. Thought I'd tear some bits up to stick on there so it looks like, you know, the moon's got craters and mountains and, you know, when you see it, hasn't it? And then I thought I'd put more tissue over the top and, you know, we'll see how it looks. And if it looks rubbish, then I'll colour it in or paint over it or do something else. So I'm going to start with a circle. Where's my thing that I used to draw my circle? Doesn't matter, I'll get another thing. I think I've put it away. I'll use this. Oh, that's not really helpful because it's got a raggedy edge, but it doesn't really matter. Just really for size, I just want my halo to come slightly bigger. Can't fit it on there. It'll do, pig. And I'm going to do my trick with the water brush. Just round like that. I want it raggedy edged anyway, so it's just rough. And then depending on how it looks, I might go back and, you know, use some white colouring pencil or something at the end. And I've done that, hopefully it should just naturally tear where it's wet. There's a bit of a hard line there, I'll have to sort that out. Because I was right on the very edge of the thing. I'm just going to tear that little cut edge, tiny weeny bit. So that'll go there. I'm going to matte medium. Am I going to glue? No, I'm matte medium. Let's get the big brush for the matte mediuming. Where's it gone? It's hiding from me. There it is. It's still a bit damp because I used it for the gesso. But that's alright. So I'm going to paint the matte medium about where... I'll just move it back over a tiny bit. I'm going to paint the matte medium about where I think the circle is. You could do a little guideline with a pencil if you were worried. Perhaps I'll do that. Perhaps I am worried. I mean, I'm not going to draw exactly round, but it's just rough. I won't get that, you know, I won't get all the little tears and things back in exactly the right place, but and stick that on. I will need my template back again because I'll need to draw myself a little line on the on top of the tissue paper when it's dry. I thought I'd get this on first, and then while that's drying I might start some, can't see my line without my head coming in the way. Let's put it on and see where we're at. We can always put a bit more under the edge if we need to. See what effect we get. Obviously we can see the dark paint through it, but just going for that, you know, that halo effect. When you're gluing tissue paper down, it's always best to use a little soft brush and work from the inside out. Just need a bit more at the top there. But those little wrinkles just add to it for me. I just need a tiny bit more under that edge. There we go. Dear pig. Right. So I shall put that in my wet rag. Where's my wet rag? My wet rag's not very wet. Put my rag in there to make it wet. And then I'm going to get my colouring pencils or pencil crayons or whatever you call them out again. I'm also, excuse me, sorry, I said a few days ago that I thought I was getting a cold. Doesn't seem to have materialised, but there's something, you know, lurking in the distance. Do you know what I mean? When you don't feel like you've got a full-blown cold, but you just feel that you're fighting something off, hopefully winning. Right, there's my brush like that, because I'll need that in a bit for my collage. So where's my bits and bobs? And I might use glue stick for this. I won't, because I need a new glue stick and it's in the other room. I'll go on with the matte medium. No, I'm not doing collage. Oh, Catherine. I'm waiting for that to dry. I'm going to do some colouring in. Yes, the painting, that's what I started to say. It's left little dots here and there. And I quite like that because that's like stars in the sky. And I think once I've done my pencil crayon, I might go back and put more little dots. Fred. So he's now digging in. I've got a big tray with all my pens and pencils and things in behind me, you know, like a cutlery tray type thing. And he likes to go and dig in there. Don't ask me why. He's a law unto himself. That's the wrong box. This box has got some pencil crayons in. I've also got my big box of Stabilos if need be. I think I'll have a little play in the trees and then I'll do the sky later. I'll just start just to give you an idea of the kind of thing I'm going to do, though I don't really know myself. So I've just got a selection of greens. I might get a black as well in case I want to do some shading. It's a bit bright, we'll get rid of that one. I'm just going to have a play really. I just like the look of pencil crayon over paint. So I'm using it on its side and this is a lighter green. So I'm just almost trying to imagine where would it be lighter where the moon hits it, you know. And I wouldn't colour it all around the edge the same distance, that doesn't really look natural. Not that I'm an expert, but I just sort of go roughly. You know what I mean? You know what I mean. Just have fun really. It's like I said, it's not a fine art piece, it's a journal. That's the process. That one's a bit lower down, so I might do that darker. I'll just do the very tips with this lighter green. I don't know if you can even see a difference through the camera. I can see a difference here. I've got various different kinds of colouring pencils. These are Derwent watercolours. I'm not sure what the other ones are anymore. But you know, whatever you've got really. I'm not going to put water on them, I'm just using them as crayons. And then if you use it on the side you get this lovely sharp point, don't you? And then you can use the point in the pointy bits. So it's just giving a bit of definition and having a bit of fun. Interesting on this, and that's down low, I didn't want to do that one. I'll do these very tips. It's interesting on this textured paper. I'm not sure I'm a huge fan of it. I prefer the smoother surface. It was interesting, I think, putting different papers in this journal, because as I'm working through, because I'm going through, you know, from the front to the back, I'll just get a darker green now, I can kind of get a feel for how the different techniques work on the different papers, so it's almost like a learning exercise. and using the papers. Obviously if you've got a really thin paper and you put a load of wet paint on it, that's not going to work very well. So then you could collage first. But I just think it's a good way to experiment with different papers that you might, and some might surprise you. Like this sketchbook, although it was quite a cheap sketchbook, it's holding up pretty well, considering how much thick paint I put. So I'm just blending with my colours and, you know, trying to keep my head out of your way in case you want to see what I'm doing. It just brings a bit of life to it. So I'll go away and do this on the trees, and I'm going to leave this. I'm not going to put any colour on that black tree. I might get my black micron pen and just do some as if there's little twiggy bits sticking off. I don't know yet. And I might also with a black or grey pencil do some very minimal on the wolf. Really just not, I don't think it'll really change it very much, it's just really for the process of colouring. I'm waiting for that to dry. So I'll go and do all that, and then when that's dry I'll come back to you for the collage. I've done the colouring in the trees, and then I took the black pencil after I'd finished all the shading, and I did this kind of shape, you know, like a zigzag going slightly angly down one side and then the other of a darker middle area, just to give them more the look of pine trees. It's very vague, but now I've got my black micron pen, but it's archival, but it doesn't matter because I'm not going to put any more wet on. Any black pen will do. It's a 4mm nib, and I'm just, if you look on the tree on the picture, you'll see the edges are sort of raggedy. It's another kind of pine tree, so I'm going around my edges that I painted. If I can do it where you can still see, I'm just basically making the edge a bit more raggedy, and here and there coming out and making these little, as if they're twigs or branches sticking out. So I'm not doing a clean outline, I'm in fact doing the opposite. I'm trying to make it look more organic is the word. And it's little touches like this when you're doing this kind of page that I like. Just, you know, the painting and all that it's okay, but I don't feel I'm adept enough at it to really enjoy it. For me it's just getting a base layer on, getting the colour on, and then it's going in and doing all these little bits afterwards that I really enjoy. So I'm going to do that all around to the top of the tree. I think you get the idea. I think it just makes it look a bit more natural. There's a slight difference between my black pen and the black gesso. There's a slight difference in shine and whatever, but you know, we can say it's glinting in the moonlight. So I'm just almost doing a gentle scribble along the edge. I mean, you might have your own ideas if you go and find this image and do this. To do it your own way, this is what I'm doing. Just put some bits poking out there. I'm just aiming to make it look just, you know, not realistic, but a bit more realistic, or a bit less unrealistic. Shouldn't put ourselves down, should we? I mean, it's recognisable to me at least as a pine tree. And then I think I'm going to outline the wolf, just so she stands out a bit more. So I'm just doing a line just all around the edge of her silhouette, because as neat as I could be with the paintbrush, it was still not a completely clean line. But of course you don't have to do this if you don't want to, if you've painted better than I have, or if it doesn't worry you. just got a few little indications of ruff of the neck there as well. Just this little bit under her belly where you see the sky. I don't think I'm going to put the line across the base of her. There is a slight difference in the colour. I'm just going to leave it like that. Stop fiddling, Catherine. There we go. So she was very dark grey. She's a shade lighter than the black, I would say, here. And then her front, her head and her front leg and her chest, I did slightly lighter grey again. Again, I'm not sure if it's showing up, but I can see it in real life. So there's my halo dry. Maybe it's dry enough. So I'm going to do my collage. Now, because I do want my actual moon to be quite round, you know, and quite a neat round, because this is the halo, I'm going to try and draw around again. Is it dry? I'm going to have to wait for that to dry a bit more. As much as I'd love to be impatient, if I start trying to draw on that with a pencil, I think it's going to tear. Maybe I'll start colouring in the sky a bit. So, same as I did on the trees, I'm just going to get some... Actually, this came out much bluer than the practice colour that I mixed, but it's fine. It's got some purple in it, but I just want to sort of unify it a bit. So what's that? That's a Prussian blue. That's a bit bright. I'm just getting, you know, whatever pencils you've got, blues, purples, maybe a bit of black. I'm just pulling them out of here. Miracle of miracles, they're all sharp. And I'll just do the same thing that I did down here, again with it on its side, just to give a bit more variation of colour. That makes a nice noise. But yeah, I'm not loving this. I think if I come across this again in my book, which I will, well, certainly the other side of the page, and I do want to paint on it rather than collage, I will stick something else over it. Not a fan, really. Probably if you're doing acrylic painting, which is what it was designed for, it would be better. So I'll scribble away. I'm just scribbling, and these you can, probably not on that paper, but on this paper, blend them with your finger a little bit. You can also activate them with water, but I'm not going to do that. So I just want to soften it all up and, you know, get rid of the brush marks a little bit and work into it. So I'll amuse myself doing that one. I'll wait for that to dry and then I'll come back to you again. Okay, it's dry now. I did a little bit more colouring in the trees. I got my white pencil and I just did a little bit of shading on the very tips of the tallest ones, as if the moonlight's catching them. And I did some white shading around the wolf's throat. And then I kind of did these lines coming out of her mouth upwards. And that's kind of either or both representing the howl, and maybe it's a very cold night and so it's her breath on the night air. Sorry, the neighbour's dogs are having a little bark. So this is now dry, I hope. It should be. It's been a while. I'm going to get quite a soft pencil and draw my moon back on, just as a guideline for my collage. Gently, hoping it doesn't tear. I think it's dry. We'll soon find out. If it tears, I'll have to stick some more over the top. Oops. Can I see? It's quite hard to see. I don't think I'll manage. I might have to get my head in every now and then, but you know, you're used to that by now. So now I've got these dark bits, like I said, and I've got my glue book, and I've got my medium, and my brush. So I'm just going to tear random shapes. I'm not doing an actual map of the moon, and I'm going to endeavour to keep the edge, you know, reasonably round and correct. That's why I put the pencil line. Oh, it's probably just as easy to do this as best I can. So I'm just using a natural curve in the bit of collage. You could also just cut it, you know, to the right curve if you were cleverer than me. And you could see your pencil line without getting your head in the way. Whoops, there we go. I'll try and tear this one with something of a curve to its outside edge. That'll be alright. You get the idea. So I'm just going to go ahead and just stick little bits on like that, you know, maybe varying the light and shade. And this has got some wiggly marks on. I think this was jelly print. This is all kinds of stuff out of the collage. And when I've done that, I shall come back for the next bit. Okay, I've done my first layer of collage. I hit on the bright idea, probably you're all shouting at me, of getting my template, getting my bit of collage paper, and then drawing a line. It doesn't matter on a circle, all the lines are the same. And then cutting on the line, and then just tearing it raggedy, you know, however you want it there, like that. But then you've got the outside circle line. Do you see what I mean? I won't stick it on because I think I'm happy. Shall I have it out there? No, it's fine. It's fine as it is. Stop now. So you can just do that all around the edge and then fill in the middle. I think that middle bit actually is a bit dark now I look at it. So I'm just going to stick another bit over the top. There we go, that'll do pig. And then the final, well, no, what I'm going to do next, because then we'll see if it's the final layer, I did the water brush trick on, this is the back of a bit of serviette, the white, you know, when you peel off. So it's just tissue. So I'm just going to make sure it's sticky still everywhere. Just to filter all that down, and then I'll see when that dries. Sorry if my head's in the way. I'll see when that dries if it's pale enough. Otherwise, I can always put paint or something over. To pull it up a bit. Not quite big enough, is it? I might put another slightly bigger bit over the top. I think it is going to mute it down a bit. I really wanted to cover that hard edge. Where is my bit of napkin? There it is. So I need to cut a bigger bit. Running out of desk room. So I'll do the same thing again, only this time I'll go with my water brush bigger than my circle. Maybe sort of, I think what happened was the water line obviously isn't a precise line, so now I want to tear on the outside of the line. I don't really mind if this isn't exact, because hopefully it'll just blend with the outer halo. So now I'm just going to tear where it's wet. That's what I mean about mixed media and collage. And just keep slapping it on until it looks okay. And hope your book's not 10 miles thick by the time you're there. Alright, I'll just have a little hover. I think that will be better. I didn't really need to use this either. I keep forgetting that I've got the other thinner matte medium in my drawer here. Now I've decanted some into a little jar. I should really use that for this. Not for any reason other than it's cheaper. It's not necessary. What I'm hoping now is that this layer will blend with the outer layer that I put on first, but the actual shape of the moon, the more round shape, will show through. I'll wait for it to dry, and like I said, I can always go and enhance that with sorry if my head was in the way, with you know, colouring pencils or paint or something. There'll always be something. I do think I want to blend the halo in a bit as well. In fact, I could probably do that now because the outer bit's dry. I'll leave that in a bit to dry. Wrap my little brush back up in the water, in the wet rag. There's my white pencil. So I'm just going to basically I've got the thick layers here. This is my thinking. I've got the thick layers here and the slightly thinner layer of the tissue paper, and then I'm going for the thinnest layer of the white pencil, just sort of scribbling a bit round the edge. You can go around once, you can always go around again. Just to get that halo effect. If the pencil doesn't work, then I shall get some paint or some white gesso. I don't think the pencil's white enough. It's just a bit of matte medium there, that's why it's not taking. Press a bit harder. But it's just playing really, isn't it? Excuse me, it's just playing. Having fun. And this is, you know, I mean I had a story that I wanted to tell, a message for myself, from myself to myself and all that, but this is the difference I think between a journal that you just write in and an art journal that's also a personal journal. There's so many overlaps, I don't think you can take all the different kinds of journal and pigeonhole them exactly. I think there's always overlaps. You can't really categorise them, can you? Strictly. But I think this art journaling process, personal art journaling, that a big part of it is the therapeutic value of the creativity, and also for me, I mean, for example, last week when I did the pages about me, when I talked about sitting with my photos and writing, if I'd just sat and written in a writing journal, all the negative things that I wrote would have stayed in there. But it was through the creative process of sticking my photos in and so on that I got to the realisation where I didn't need the negativity. You know, so that was quite telling. That came out for me through the creative process. So it went, you know, beyond the act of writing. Now you'll all have to tell me how that looks because I can't really see from way over here. So I think I'll stop a minute and go and sit with it. Maybe make a cup of tea for my slightly croaky voice and let that dry, and then if I decide I need to do more or get some gesso out or something like that, I can come back and do that. And then undo the final thing, which will be putting some more stars in the sky, I think. So yeah, I'm going to have a cup of tea. I'll be back in a minute. I keep saying I'll be back in a minute. I don't disappear at all as far as you're concerned because I edit and pause. Okay, the colouring pencils did okay, but they weren't really robust enough. So I also have got these, which are certainly older than Joey, so they're 25, 30 years old maybe. There's some pastel crayons. All it says on it is Conte à Paris. So I used some of those. I did some purple and blue in the sky, and I worked quite a lot on the moon itself. Where the actual moon is rather than the halo, I went over it on its side with a white crayon, and there it's lovely, all the wrinkles pick up. And then I went around the edge a little bit with a very pale grey just to try and give it some form. And then I went again with the white off the side of the tissue, onto the tissue paper and off the side, just to, you know, and I think it looks much better now. And then on the she-wolf herself, I put her a glow, like a moon glow on her chest here, and I made the howl / breath in the cold air a little bit stronger, and a tiny bit more white and a very pale green on the very tips of the tallest trees. So that, I think I'm happy with that now, with all the colouring and everything. I still want to do the stars and put the words on. So all I'm going to do for the stars is, I've got a white gel pen. This one is a Uniball Signo. And like I said before, there are already these little, sorry, the clock's chiming, 10. There are already these little spots that the paint missed. So I'm just going to do, I'll go where the spots are because they're random. Just little dots. And you could draw star shapes if you wanted to, but I want it to be a bit more subtle. So I think I'll, and this, sorry, I'm starting sentences and not finishing them all over the place. This, once it's dry, won't smudge, but when it's wet it'll smudge. So you just have to be a bit careful. But you get the idea. So I'm going to go ahead and do little stars all over. And I'll have to twist it and turn it and get my head in the way. So when I've done that, I'll come back and stick the words on with you for the ending. Okay, I'm done with my little stars, and I literally went where the little white dots had missed, and then I did a few more in between. I guess if you really wanted to, you could find a constellation, you know, and do a constellation on there. Maybe it's their one to do with the wolf. Could have done Sirius, Canis Major, the dog star. But anyway, that's just an idea, a thought I just had. The other thing I did was I wrote with my white pen, but you can hardly see it. I can just see it here and there. Going round, all the way around the edge of the actual moon, I wrote circles and circles and circles and circles, just over and over. And that is from a song by Tori Amos, from her album Under the Pink, which was one of my favourite albums back in the day, from a song called Cloud on My Tongue, and it's I've been listening to that album in the car recently if I've been driving anywhere. So yeah, so I've written that round and round, and it's one of those things, like here I can just see the word circles more clearly. It's very subtle, I know it's there, I did it, you know, but it doesn't show up very much. So here's my quote. I typed it using a handwriting type font, typed it, you know, I don't have a typewriter on the laptop tablet thing, and printed it out, and I risked putting this, it's sketchbook paper that's been tea dyed through the printer, and it worked okay. And I've inked the edge, of course I have, with some black ink. So I'm going to put it down here on the rock, kind of, it'll go on the rock and a little bit onto the trees, because I think that balances the moon and kind of draws a bit more attention to the wolf. So I've got my Fred's got a hairball. Stella's helping him. She always gets worried when he's got a hairball. I think he'd rather she just left him alone, but you know. Anyway, let's get this stuck on. So I hope you have fun with this. You know, a few of you in the Facebook group are journaling along with me, and it's lovely to see your work in there if you're in there. Or otherwise you can tag me on Instagram or whatever. Or yeah, I don't really look at wider Facebook these days, but you can tag me on Instagram, or if you're in the group, obviously. it's quite thick, this paper. I'm going to put lots of my medium on it. And the other thing I should have said about those pastels is they will need to be fixed. And I do know that I have got a can of fixer in my drawer in the studio, which I haven't used for yonk, so I'm hoping it still works. I also know people use hairspray, but I don't use hairspray either, so otherwise it will smudge and that's the end of it. Can't do anything about it. I'm just going to stick this down here, hopefully get it straight. I've got all kinds of stuff on my hand. Let's just put that over it and get my old credit card. Somebody was concerned that I was showing a credit card. It's a very old French one from an account long closed and it's long expired. But I'm holding it in such a way that the numbers don't show, so I don't think there's much to be risked. Okay, there we go, that'll do. So there we go, that's my spread for this week. Inspired by many things. The moon, going a bit, you know, being a bit, I don't even know what the word is, feeling a bit strange, and, you know, wondering if that's anything to do with the full moon. I'll be very interested to hear your thoughts on that. But also the book, if you don't know the book and you think you like those kinds of books, you know, highly recommended. I'm sure many of you do know it already. There's my she-wolf howling at the moon. So thank you so much for watching. Can you see it all? I'm putting up with my ineptitudes. And it's lovely to have you along with me on this journey. And have a lovely week. If you're only following along on Monday, if you're here for the stitching, then Wednesday is the comfort cloth, the comfort coverlet, and I'm going to be starting the fancy stitching. And this Friday will be the slow journaling with the art journal that I'm making, Kate the Brave. So yeah, I hope you enjoy the rest of your week, whatever you're doing, and I look forward to you joining me next time for more journaling tales. Bye bye.